Hi. So in this video, we're going to be learning about the function ReadWriteSaveFile in Drika's Hotspot. And with some functions, and this one especially, the best way to learn is just by doing an example. So that's what we're going to do in this case. Create a new map and create what you see right here. So you're going to have a wall, you're going to have a door, you got a player right here, and you have two keys. Make sure that you name the door, door, and you name the red key, and the blue key, just like that. Go ahead and do that, and then pause this video, go ahead and do that, and then when you're ready, come back. Okay, now that you're back, we can continue. So now, if you haven't already, make sure you have a Drika's Hotspot in here. And you're going to add a ReadWriteSaveFile function. Change it to the write mode, right at the top here. And then we're going to type some stuff in. Now, one thing you have to understand is that there are no specific things you can write in here. So for example, in the function sendCharacterMessage, you can write restore health, and then that will restore your health. Or I could change this to ignite. Each one of these things I write has a specific meaning, and if I were to write something like Jumpy Jacko, this has no meaning and will not do anything to the character. I have to write one of these things in this list here. I could do the same thing, for example, with sending level messages. You can send anything you want, but there are even specific level messages, such as reset, for example. If I type this in, it's like pressing L in the editor. It's going to restart everything. With Drika's Hotspot, there isn't any of that. You decide what you want to write, and you decide what name and what value pair it's going to have. So I could write red, and the value is going to be false, or I could write hello, and the value is going to be 0, or I don't know, that. It doesn't really matter. You decide, and then you give it meaning later on. So in this case, we want to track two things. What we're going to do, remember, is we're going to have the player pick up both keys, and then until he picks up both keys, he can't go through the door. So what we want to track is the two keys the player has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type player has red key. And I'm going to set that to false. The player does not have the red key. I could set this to 0, but false is just a little bit easier to read, so I prefer to use that. I could also set that to 5 or whatever I want. It's all about creating things that you understand the meaning for, and you'll remember later on. So I have player has red key is false. Now I'm duplicating that, and I'm just going to change this to blue key. So we've just written two things to a file. Drika's Hotspot has a file where these actually get written to, and we've just written these two values to that file. Player has red key, and player has blue key, and we've set them both to false. So this is going to trigger the moment the game starts. Also remember that we're going to be disabling these when the player goes over them, and we're also going to be disabling the door when the player has both keys. So just to make sure that there's no bugs or anything, I'm going to make sure that they're first enabled. Right at the start of the level, they're always going to be enabled. So I'm going to set enable to the door, red key, and blue key, because this is what you should have named your three main objects here. Okay. So I'm just making sure those are all enabled. And that's all that's going to happen in that hotspot, is we've created this tracker for the red key, this tracker for the blue key, and we've enabled the three objects. So now, you're going to make a copy of that hotspot and bring it over here. And it's just easier to make a copy because you already have this part written down. I'm deleting everything but this. And this time, I want to check if the player is close to the key. So I'm going to say, is the character in proximity to the named object red key? And I will say a distance of 2 away. If this is true, then I want to write that as true. I want to update the tracker so that we can check it later and see that it's actually true and not false. And also, I want to disable the key. Named object, red key. Set enabled to false. So if you haven't done that already, pause the video, make sure you have this set up. You have a copy, you have it set up so that when the player gets near, or in other words, in proximity to the red key, you're going to update this tracker to true, and you're going to make this disappear. Now, let me be clear, if you accidentally make a typo, Drika's Hotspot is going to see that as an entirely different tracker, because you're the one who decides the name, and you have to keep to that name. So make sure that you type everything in correctly. That's actually one of the reasons I just duplicated it, is so that I don't have to type it again, and I know I haven't made any mistakes. So now that you have this, we're just going to duplicate this hotspot one more time, and we're going to drag it over to here. And now, I want to see if I'm close to the blue key. We're just going to change everything over to blue. Blue key. There we go. I'm going to check, does the player have the blue key? And then, if true, I'm going to disable the blue key. At this point, this would be a good time to hop in and just make sure everything is looking all right. Alright, so I get close enough to the red key, it disappears, and I know that behind the scenes, I have invisibly set the tracker, player has red key, to true. And then the same thing's going to happen with the blue key. However, we haven't actually done anything with the door yet. So this is where the fun bit comes in. Right now, these trackers aren't actually doing anything. They're completely useless. But that's just because we haven't checked for them yet. We're not actually using the trackers to track anything. So what we want to do is we want to use them to check for a condition. In this case, we want to check and see if the player has both keys. So we know that when the player goes over this gets set to true, and this one gets set to true. So we can use that now to check and see if both are true. And if both are true, we open the door. So I'm just copying the red key one over to here. And I'm going to say, if I'm in proximity to the door. Now, instead of writing for these two trackers, I want to read. So I'm going to change the mode over to read. And I'm going to add an additional condition. You can add up to 2. I'm just adding 1. So player has red key is true. I only want to continue on if that is true. And additionally, I only want to continue on if the player has the blue key. So we've set these trackers earlier on. Now we're going to actually use them. We're going to refer to them. And so what's happening behind the scenes here is every time you do this, Drika's Hotspot is actually reading that file in documents and checking that entry that you have put in there. It's like you've put an entry in a log or something, or in a notebook, and it's going back to that notebook and it's checking and reading and saying, oh, okay, so this is the current state of each of these trackers. And if both those are true, I want to disable the door. Now, remember though, unlike these two, which is kind of set it and forget it, once the keys disappeared, I don't care about checking if the player's near there again. The player could go up to this door before he goes to either key, so I have to create a bit of a loop here. So the last thing we're going to do to make this work is we're just going to make this loop back on itself every time it doesn't detect these conditions. So I'm going to say, if not, go to line 0, so go to your own line, and then also, if not, go to line 0. So basically, it's just going to say, all right, is the player close to the door? No? All right, just check again. Is the player close to the door? No? All right, check again. Oh, the player is close to the door. Okay. Does the player have both keys? No? All right, go back again. Is the player close to the door? Yes. Does the player have both keys? Oh, it does now? Okay, do this. That's basically what we've just done there. So now, if we test this out, nothing's going to happen when I go up to the door. Nothing's going to happen when I pick up the first key and go up to the door. But when I pick up the second key, now I have both keys. We've invisibly written that to a file using the write function of ReadWriteSaveFile. And now, using the read function, we're going to read that file and say, oh, look at that, the player has both keys. They've both been set to true. And it's going to make the door disappear. And just like that, there's how to unlock a door with 2 keys. So hopefully that explains what ReadWriteSaveFile can do. I recorded a couple other versions of this video where I tried to explain without an example, or to show it first and then show an example. And I just found that the best way to show how this works is to just have you actually do it. It's just a lot easier to understand the whole concept of creating a tracker. If you already write code, you probably got this right away, and you probably skipped through this video pretty fast. But if you didn't, or you're sort of unfamiliar with that concept, hopefully this helped you get the idea of how ReadWriteSaveFile works. Either way, have fun, and I'll see you in the next video.